My name is Zoe, and I live in Sacramento, California. I had my first baby girl, Lily, just 4 weeks ago. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and in complete awe of this tiny human I created. My husband Ethan and I were still adjusting to being new parents, running on barely 3 hours of sleep a night. At first, I was grateful when Ethan's mom, Carol, offered to help. She said she had raised 3 kids without a single nanny and insisted she knew what she was doing. I figured having an experienced hand around wouldn't hurt, especially when I barely had time to shower or brush my teeth. Carol would drop by almost every day. Sometimes she brought groceries or cooked dinner, which honestly felt like a blessing. But it didn't take long for things to feel off. She started showing up without asking. One time I was breastfeeding Lily and she just walked right in without knocking. I tried to laugh it off, but inside I felt violated. She constantly commented on everything I did. You're not burping her right. You're holding her too much. She's crying because she senses your stress. It was like every move I made was being judged. But I kept biting my tongue because I didn't want to cause tension. Then she started referring to Lily as my baby. At first I thought it was just a figure of speech, but she said it so often it made me pause. Once, I overheard her telling someone on the phone, "My baby is finally here. She's perfect." I froze. Was she talking about Lily? I brought it up with Ethan, hoping he'd understand how weird it felt. But he just shrugged and said, "She's just excited, Zoe. Don't read into it." I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was going on. I tried setting small boundaries, like asking her to call before coming over, but she ignored them. She said things like, "This is my son's house too. I don't need permission to see my granddaughter." I was starting to feel like a guest in my own home. And the worst part? Everyone acted like I was overreacting. That maybe I was just hormonal, sensitive, or too inexperienced to know what real help looked like. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't realize how far it would go, or how close I was to losing everything. After that phone call I overheard, things only got worse. Carol began acting like Lily was her second chance at motherhood. She started showing up even earlier in the day, sometimes before 8 a.m., letting herself in with the spare key we had given her months ago just in case of emergencies. At that point, every morning felt like I was waking up to an uninvited guest who was slowly taking over my life. She started dressing Lily in clothes I'd never seen before, ones she must have bought without telling me. Sometimes I'd go to change Lily's diaper and realize Carol had already done it without saying a word. She made comments like, "I know how to soothe her better," or, "It's instinct, sweetie. You either have it or you don't." That stung. I'd carried this child for 9 months, gave birth to her, and yet Carol acted like I was the outsider. I noticed she was trying to take control of feeding times too. Once, I caught her mixing formula even though I was exclusively breastfeeding. When I asked her why, she smiled and said, "You looked tired, so I figured I'd help out." But she didn't ask. She just did it. That moment made my skin crawl. I wasn't just exhausted. I was being erased. When I tried to talk to Ethan again, he defended her. "She's just excited, Zoe. She means well," but I could see how it was affecting Lily. She cried more when Carol was around, especially when she was passed between us like a tug-of-war rope. I began to dread every knock on the door, every moment Carol's car pulled into our driveway. Then something happened that I couldn't ignore. One afternoon I came out of the shower to find Lily gone. I panicked, shouting for her. Carol called out from the front yard. She had taken Lily outside for some fresh air. No note, no heads up, just gone. And my heart was racing, and for the first time, I snapped. I told Carol she had to call or text before taking Lily anywhere. She looked at me, completely offended, and said, "You're overreacting. You should be thanking me." But I wasn't thankful. I was terrified. It wasn't just her behavior, it was the way she looked at Lily. Possessive. Like she truly believed Lily was hers. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every time Lily stirred, I thought about how easily Carol had walked off with her. And for the first time, I realized something chilling. If Carol thought I wasn't fit to be a mom, what would she try to do next? After that afternoon, I couldn't shake the fear. I changed the locks the next day while Ethan was at work. I didn't even tell him, I just couldn't risk it anymore. When he came home and couldn't get in, he was confused. When I explained what I did and why, his face changed. You changed the locks without telling me? He asked, stunned. I had to, I said. She can't just walk in here whenever she wants, Ethan. She took our daughter without asking. She's your mother-in-law, Zoe. She was just trying to help. That sentence broke something in me. I realized then that Ethan didn't fully grasp what was happening. He thought I was overreacting. Maybe hormonal, maybe anxious, maybe just tired. But I wasn't imagining any of this. I knew something was off. So I started documenting. Every uninvited visit, every time she undermined my parenting. I kept a notebook and took time-stamped photos of things she moved or changed in the house. I even recorded one conversation, Carol saying, "You're not cut out for this, Zoe. I'm just stepping in where you fall short." When I played it for Ethan, he was silent. I watched his face as the words played. His jaw tightened. He closed his eyes. "I didn't know she said that," he whispered. "She's never talked to you like that before, has she?" "She has," I said quietly. "You just weren't there to hear it." For a moment, I thought I was getting through to him. But the next morning, I found him having coffee with her at the kitchen table, laughing like nothing had changed. I felt like I was living in two separate worlds, one where I was fighting for my child and another where everyone else just thought things were fine. That's when Carol crossed a line I couldn't forgive. I came home from a quick grocery run to find her sitting on the couch with Lily feeding her formula again. I had told her multiple times we were breastfeeding only. When I confronted her, she snapped. "You're not producing enough milk, Zoe. I had to step in." "You had to? You're not her mother." She stood up slowly and said, "I should have been." I stood there, stunned, holding a bag of groceries and shaking. It wasn't just interference anymore. It was obsession. I knew then that if I didn't act soon, Carol would do something none of us could take back. And the terrifying part? I wasn't sure my husband would stop her. After that confrontation, I told Ethan that Carol was no longer allowed to be alone with Lily. I needed him to back me up, not just as my husband, but as Lily's father. He said he understood, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. The guilt, the conflict. Carol had always been the rock in his life. He didn't want to see her as the problem. A few days passed quietly. Carol didn't come over. I started to feel like maybe we'd finally set a boundary that stuck. I even let myself relax a little. That was a mistake. It was a Saturday morning. I had been up all night with Lily and finally handed her to Ethan so I could get a few hours of rest. I collapsed into bed, completely drained. When I woke up, it was almost noon. The house was too quiet. I called out, "Ethan!" No answer. I went downstairs, no sign of him, and Lily's crib was empty. My chest tightened. I called Ethan's phone, and after a few rings, he picked up. "Hey," he said casually. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Oh, Mom came by. She offered to watch Lily for a bit so I could run some errands. I thought you'd still be sleeping." I froze. "You let her take Lily?" "Zoe, it's fine. She's her grandmother." I hung up. It was all I had. I didn't even put on shoes. I grabbed my keys and drove to Carol's house. I knocked, no answer. I banged on the door, rang the bell, even shouted her name. Nothing. I called Ethan again, voice shaking. "She's not here." "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's not at her house. Where is Lily?" We both started calling her, no answer. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. Finally, Ethan's phone rang. Carol. She said she had taken Lily somewhere quiet so she could bond without interference. She was 2 hours away at a motel she'd booked under her name. I felt the blood drain from my face. I called the police. When we arrived, she was in the motel room, sitting in the corner, rocking Lily in her arms like nothing was wrong. She looked up and smiled. She needed time with me. That day changed everything. The officers didn't arrest her. Legally, she hadn't taken Lily by force. But they filed a report, and I contacted a lawyer that same night. Because now it wasn't just about boundaries or disrespect. Now it was about safety. And the terrifying truth was that someone I had once trusted had taken my child, just walked away with her. And no one seemed to take it seriously. But I would, even if I had to fight everyone else to be heard. The day after the motel incident, my world felt like it had tilted off its axis. I held Lily tighter than ever before, watching her tiny chest rise and fall as she slept in my arms. The idea that someone could take her from me, and believe they had the right to, haunted every breath I took. I told Ethan, firmly and clearly, that his mother was no longer welcome near Lily, not in our home, not anywhere. At first he argued. He said Carol just got carried away, and that she didn't mean any harm, but I was done compromising. I told him I had already contacted a lawyer and that I was filing for a protective order. That was when his tone changed. "You're taking this too far," he said. "She's still my mother." "And I'm still Lily's," I replied. "And I won't lose her just because you're afraid to stand up to yours." That night, Ethan didn't come home. I didn't know where he went, and honestly, I didn't care. My focus was on Lily, on keeping her safe. The next morning, I received a call from Child Protective Services. Someone had filed a report against me, alleging I was mentally unstable, had postpartum delusions, and was endangering my child. My hands shook as I held the phone. I knew exactly who made that call. Errol. I sat down with the caseworker, answered every question honestly, provided medical records from my OBGYN and therapist, and opened my home for inspection. I had nothing to hide. But that didn't make the process any less terrifying. Later that week, I confronted Ethan. "Did you know?" I asked him. He looked down. "She told me she was thinking about it. I didn't think she'd actually do it. So you just let her?" He didn't answer. The silence was louder than any apology. I moved out 2 days later, took Lily, and stayed at my sister's apartment across town. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. No surprise visits, no judgmental stares, just quiet and safety. A few days later, my lawyer called. Carol had filed a petition for grandparent visitation rights, and worse, she'd also submitted a request for temporary guardianship, claiming I was emotionally unstable and that Ethan was too passive to protect the baby. She wasn't just interfering now. She was trying to legally take my daughter away from me. And if I didn't fight with everything I had, she just might win. The legal process was slow, exhausting, and expensive, but I had no choice. I wasn't just fighting for custody, I was fighting for my identity as Lily's mother. My lawyer was sharp and focused. She helped me gather every document, every photo, every piece of evidence I had against Carol. We submitted medical evaluations proving I was mentally stable. My OBGYN and therapist both wrote letters supporting my capacity as a mother. Even the CPS investigator, after a full home visit and interviews, had cleared me completely. But the court date was still weeks away. In the meantime, I was trying to rebuild my life. I applied for full legal custody and limited Ethan's visitation to supervised time only. It felt brutal, but necessary. I couldn't trust anyone who wouldn't protect Lily from Carol, and right now, that included her own father. Ethan came to see Lily once at my sister's apartment. He looked tired, confused, and older than I remembered. He asked me if I was really going through with it. I said yes. He nodded quietly, then left. That was the last time I saw him before court. Meanwhile, Carol violated boundaries again. She showed up at my sister's job with a fake story about needing to drop off baby supplies. When my sister refused to talk to her, Carol waited outside for hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily. That was enough for the court to grant a temporary restraining order. Now she couldn't come within 300 feet of me or Lily. And that's when something shifted inside me. I stopped being afraid of Carol. I stopped doubting myself. I started to see what she really was. Not a protective grandmother, but a woman obsessed with control. So I did what I had to do. I got a job working remotely, found a small apartment of my own, and set up a peaceful little life for me and Lily. We had routines. Morning walks, music during bath time, and storybooks before bed. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. And it was safe. For the first time, I felt like a real mother. Not one constantly second-guessed, undermined, or ignored. I was Lily's protector now. And no court filing, no manipulative relative was going to take that away from me. The court date was coming, and I was ready, because I finally understood. Being a mom isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. The day of the custody hearing arrived like a storm cloud that had been gathering for months. I dressed Lily in a soft yellow dress, kissed her forehead, and left her with my sister outside the courthouse. My hands were shaking as I walked in, clutching a folder of documents that told the truth I had lived through. Carol was already there, sitting next to her lawyer in a tailored suit, calm and composed. You would have thought she was applying for a job, not trying to take someone's baby. Ethan sat on her other side, silent. He didn't look at me when I walked in. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. When the judge entered, everyone rose, and for the first time, I felt the weight of what I was fighting for. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Lily's future. Carol's lawyer painted a picture of me as unstable and paranoid, referencing her concern for Lily's well-being. They called it a grandmother's loving intervention. But I had my evidence. Medical records, therapist notes, CPS clearance, photos, text messages. Proof of Carol's manipulation and interference. Then came the turning point. The judge asked Ethan to speak. He stood up, looked around, then at me. At first I didn't believe what Zoe was going through, he said. I thought my mom was just being helpful. But I was wrong. He paused. I've seen the way she talks to Zoe, the way she oversteps, and the day she took Lily without telling us. That wasn't love. That was control. Carol turned toward him, visibly stunned, but Ethan didn't look back. I want what's best for my daughter, he continued, and that means supporting Zoe. I felt tears rise to my eyes. The judge ruled in my favor. Full legal and physical custody was granted to me. Carol's request for guardianship was denied. The court ordered supervised visits only, and only if I consented. Carol stood silently, lips pressed tight, her face unreadable. Outside the courtroom, Ethan approached me. I'm sorry it took me so long, he said quietly. I nodded. I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet, but I was relieved he finally saw the truth. The fight wasn't easy. It drained me, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. But standing there, holding the ruling in my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Oh, it's been nearly a year since the court hearing, and every part of my life looks different now. Lily is walking, babbling, and chasing after our cat like a little whirlwind. She's healthy, happy, and full of light. I still get scared sometimes, when I hear a knock at the door too late at night, or when an unfamiliar car parks outside my building. But that fear doesn't control me anymore. Ethan and I are no longer together. After the hearing, we tried therapy, but too much had broken between us. He now sees Lily once a week under a structured parenting plan, and, to his credit, he's respectful of the boundaries I've set. We're civil, but distant. As for Carol, she hasn't seen Lily since the court ruling. She tried to send a birthday gift through the mail, a pink stuffed bear with a note that said, "From Grandma, always." I didn't give it to Lily, not because I want to erase her grandmother, but because I want to protect her peace. Looking back, I think Carol truly believed she was doing what was best. But love without respect is not love at all. What she wanted wasn't a relationship with her granddaughter. It was possession, control. And I've learned that motherhood, real motherhood, isn't about who gave birth or who held the baby the most. It's not about who buys the clothes or who gets the most attention. It's about showing up, over and over, even when you're tired, even when you're scared. It's about choosing your child's well-being over your own comfort. And sometimes, it's about walking away from people you once loved just to keep your child safe. For a long time, I doubted myself. I let someone else's voice drown out my own, but not anymore. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a scared woman. I see a mother. A real one. And when I see Lily sleeping peacefully in her crib, I know I did the right thing. I saved her from something she may never remember, but something I will never forget. This isn't the life I imagined when I first became a mom. It's better, because it's mine, and every day I earn it.